tell me about vaccines, because I'll be honest, doctor, I've been talking to people for the last 5 years that are very suspicious of vaccines. I have two young boys, 3 and 4 years old, that, I mean, thankfully now we never vaccinated, but I was really thinking about it 6 months ago. And again, I come from a classic science training and background where I'm taught science works, especially if it's tested. Vaccines are based in science. And so I just would trust the establishment. But it's so hard to believe that these toxic things are right out in the public, being injected into our children and being required for them that. And in the UK here, they have to have injections to go to school. How can this kind of open lie have grown so big without anyone saying something?
Well, I like you, I come from a classic background, and I believed, I developed immune therapies and vaccines. I encouraged even my siblings to get the Gardasil vaccine for cervical, for HPV, to prevent theoretically cervical cancer. So until I experienced what I experienced in 2011, and since, with what was revealed when I actually saw the data, because most people don't see the data. We work in other fields. We make different kinds of immune therapies. And until I realized that none of the safety testing was done, the way we discussed earlier, until I looked at what's called the excipient list, which is all the other stuff that's in the needle, that's not the antigen, that's not the thing you're supposed to make an immune response to. These, what the adventitious agents are, the microbes, and then aluminum, formaldehyde, polysorbate 80, which is a detergent that opens the blood-brain barrier. We use it in developing drugs for brain cancer because it's difficult to get things into the brain. But why are you injecting it into a newborn or the elderly or anybody else for that matter? Well, the fact of the matter is, because most people don't know about the 1986 National Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, where all liability was removed from manufacturers, and the government given the job, the HHS and the Department of Justice, DOJ, given the job of doing the testing, as you know, at that time, President Reagan was told again by Tony Fauci that that vaccines are, I'm paraphrasing, unavoidably unsafe, and we're not going to make your vaccines and prevent these, pandemics if you don't relieve us of the lawsuits. Because in the early 80s, and it's in our book, Plague of Corruption, there's a chapter on this. In the early 80s, an attorney, an environmental attorney, Mike Hugo, was winning a lot of lawsuits against DTP injuries, for DTP injuries in courts. The huge lawsuits, like we know in a few years ago with Monsanto and glyphosate and Roundup. These huge $100 million lawsuits, probably at the time it was less, for these DTP injured kids. So what is DTP? Well, it's diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. But they grew the pertussis, the agent, the microbe, in the cells. And literally, to tell your audience how they're made, they literally just took the cells, slammed them against the wall of a centrifuge to spin, to concentrate it, and then just didn't clean out the cell debris. Didn't clean out the cells that the agent was grown in, and that was causing extreme seizures, death, the debris, the garbage from animal cells. Literally just took it right out of the vat and injected it into people, and the cost of cleaning up, the cost of cleaning up the vaccine was like a half penny a dose. And the company at the time, Wyeth, and I encourage you to have on your show sometime Mike Hugo, because he taught me so much. I knew none of this in 2011 before he started educating me. He's the lawyer that was working on these, and he actually wrote the parts of the law for the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, because what they were doing in these cases was dragging it out for years, and the families families just really needed relief for their severely injured children in wheelchairs and needed to get them some care. So this was supposed to be a rapid 1 year, we'll compensate here, we accept that the vaccines cause injuries. And the court has been so corrupted since then, to the point in 2011 it's totally corrupt, and essentially the vaccine is presumed innocent at all costs. And you're suing HHS, the entire Health and Human Services and Department of Justice, as the injured. And I, as I said in my book, with everything I've been through with in the past few years, the worst corruption, the most horrific thing I've ever seen was vaccine court, and it's pure evil.
And there's a lot of money involved here, I'm guessing. And we see figures like Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci telling us that the only solution is a vaccine. You want to get back to work, you want to maybe not lose your generational wealth or any of your savings, it's a vaccine. You want to go back to gatherings, it's a vaccine. It's almost like that is being quoted as the only answer, and the public is almost running towards this as a solution. How are they involved, and is it purely financial, the interests of these men and other people in the corruption?
Well, it's considerably financial, but again, this is criminal extortion. This is, they know they're not safe. They know there won't be infected. We all know the data show that we haven't developed a vaccine for SARS in 20 years that does anything other than drive the disease and will kill people. And yet, the public officials, Dr. Fauci, Deborah Birx, Robert Redfield, all have not only financial conflicts of interest with the Gates Foundation and other things, but they're covering up criminal extortion and criminal fraud in publications all the way back to the 80s, and the criminal fraud they perpetrated with a vaccine for HIV and drugs for HIV back in the 80s. So they really should be charged with treason for this latest. All I can say is it's a plague of corruption, and it's a big cover up, and it's crimes against humanity. I don't know any other way to say it.